Alright, you egg-sucking pieces of gutter trash. Time to review the X-Men. Ah! Hi guys, this is the Ol Drunken Geek again, and today I'm gonna review one of my favorite shows from my previous video about my top favorite 90s cartoons. I'm gonna review, part 1 review of X-Men the Animated Series. Excuse me. I have not watched this show since I was a kid. I was a kid in the 90s, right? I was born in 85, so 95, more or less around the time I was watching the show, I was about 10. So it's fucking perfect age to watch an X-Men show. I'm not originally from the States. I'm Peruvian originally, and the X-Men hit like a year after he came here, so I didn't watch any of that. So I came to the fucking States and just flipped on the TV, boop, and fucking X-Men, superheroes I had never heard about. So the first thing I noticed upon revisiting this fucking beautiful fucking cartoon was that they wasted no time with origin stories, son. They went straight for the fucking, okay, so these are the X-Men, they all got powers and whatever. Jubilee is really your introduction to the show. The first couple episodes are kind of, I don't want to say fully based around Jubilee. The first episode kind of is. And it introduces you to the world of mutants and the fact that they're not really well liked. I mean, everybody knows the story by now, that mutants just happen to pop up one day in the world and they're getting more recognition nowadays, and people are afraid of them, rightfully so. I mean, if a motherfucker can move shit with their mind or blow shit up by looking at it, or some bitch shot freaking fireworks out of her hands, I'd have some apprehensions too. But through Jubilee, you do get like the sense of isolation in a way, the sense of persecution from the show. In the first episode is I believe it's called Night of the Living Sentinels, the pilot episode, and it's fucking just that, man. The Sentinels, which are giant robots commissioned by the government to capture mutants, or in comic books sometimes kill mutants, depending whatever the story wants to use them for. They do some of the fucking, if you think about it, you're watching a cartoon, so you're like, whatever, and you're a kid, so you're whatever. But you really think about the concept, if you're in your house, sleeping in your fucking bed, and a giant fucking robot tears the roof off that bitch and fucking pulls you from your bed and takes you somewhere, it's pretty fucking scary. And that's what the X-Men have to deal with, is a world that doesn't understand them, doesn't want to. A lot of people don't. A lot of people do, just like a normal life. Like, what I really like about the show is that the characters are very organic. Through the beginning of the show, you get all these tidbits of what their personalities are, who's who, and whatever. But as the show develops, you get this, you get more from their backstories, a little bit more and a little bit more. And by season 2 and 3, you're like, fuck, man. Like, these characters got some depth. For example, Storm. Storm is, by all purposes, she can be the leader of the X-Men. Traditionally, it's Cyclops in the show. And I mean, this is in the 90s, so obviously everybody wasn't as aware of, like, equality as they are now. And, we were like, obviously the man's in charge. That man's a man and white, so fucking, hey, he's in charge. But the show does show that Storm could be just as good as a leader as Scott for the X-Men. But they do show you her shortcomings, which is she has a trauma. She's traumatized of enclosed space. She has claustrophobia. And it comes out, and they give it to you slowly, too. They give it to you, she has an experience where she's put in, like, a little holding cell, and she's fucking freaking out. You're like, whoa, that's weird, that catches you out of nowhere. But later on, when they get into her backstory, you know that she's had this fear since a child because of the Shadow King. The whole show, the whole time, she's all like, powers of the wind, unleash your fury, or some shit. But fucking, you throw a wall at her, or fucking put her in a closet, and that bitch is all like, ah, somebody help. One thing I did not remember when I was a kid about this show is the fact that Cyclops is an asshole, bro. He's such an asshole. In their first mission, I'm not in the military, but I know sometimes in the military you have to do some choices, maybe retreat and maybe leave a man behind, depending on this, to save other soldiers or whatever. But fuck, he does this and he leaves one character, spoiler alert, one character named Morph. He's like he gets his day in the sun too, but he's mostly a throwaway character. And Morph gets caught by the Sentinels, and he decides to leave him. And Wolverine's like, no, he just fucking knocks Wolverine out and just like keeps it moving. And then he's like, well, you know, I like Morph, but I had to make a call, so fuck you, Wolverine, if you have a problem with that. I don't even care about your feelings. Basically what he says in the show. Later on in the show, after the Phoenix Saga, which I will get to in a minute, you know, Jean is not the same. She's inhabited by the Phoenix. He feels like their relationship is no longer going to go anywhere, even though they're still dating, and she's basically, for all intensive purposes, as a metaphor, she's sick in the hospital, right? This motherfucker goes out and finds a new girl, and yeah, man, it's not cute. Like, she goes in the club and he's like making out with a chick. It's not cute. And that, you know, kind of helps unleash the Dark Phoenix, the beginning of the Dark Phoenix saga. So yeah, man, fucking Cyclops is an asshole. That shit did not come through when I was a kid. I did not think he was an asshole, but yeah, he is, son. My favorite character from the show by far is Beast. When I was a kid, Beast was like, okay, whatever. You know, he's there. He's the smart guy. He makes all these quips. But fucking Beast, man, he is the most real character. He's the one that has to put up with the most adversity out of all the X-Men, obviously because he's blue and fucking furry. But he's the one that's got the most composure. And if anybody ever wants to know what Beast is about, they should watch episode 3 of this show, where Beast is basically, he's been locked up. He's been locked up because he was captured by the Sentinels. And fucking Magneto fucking goes into jail and frees him. He's like, Beast is like, no, I don't want to be freed. I want to take this shit to court because this needs to be talked about. Mutants need to be talked about. We need to be in the limelight. And this needs to be discussed. I didn't really feel like I did anything wrong. And fuck it. I'm a martyr. If I have to spend the rest of my life in jail, so be it. This needs to happen. And that just sums up like everything about Beast. This brings me to Professor X. He was kind of garbage in the show, bruh. Like, I know Professor X is like one of the most powerful telepaths, but the shit really doesn't show in this show. Like, he's always having trouble. He always needs the X. I mean, you know, he obviously needs the X-Men, I guess, in the comics, but, you know, he could shut down some people's minds, and he barely ever shuts anything down. He shuts his own self down. He's always, like, screaming and shit. So that shit you've all seen on YouTube about that compilation of him screaming, that's real, bruh. Like, every other episode, this motherfucker screaming, just, the power. It's too much power. Yeah! It's nah, bruh. Professor, like, you gotta get your shit together. Rogue, she gets her day in the sun. And man, her character, if you couldn't touch anybody, you can never kiss or hug anybody. It shows how much strain that takes on her personality. You know, she's like a stereotypical person from the South, a stereotypical woman from the South. She's very warm-hearted and, you know, energetic, and she just wants to be a doll for everybody, but she can't hug anybody, she can't touch anybody, fuck, she can't even shake people's hands. So it shows there's a lot of times where Jean and Cyclops are making out, and like I said, Cyclops is a dick. Like, you know, she's standing right there, bro. You're just going, French your girl, dick move. And she looks at him, and she, like, you hear her inner dialogue, like, y'all don't know how good y'all have it. It's like, man, fuck. And also, like, not to be misogynist, but Rogue, bruh. I'm telling you. Trying to tell you. Woo! It's a reason you can't touch. Too hot to handle. Moving on to Wolverine. The star of the show, or so I thought when I was a kid. His character's great. You know, he does the really typical Wolverine shit. You know, he doesn't remember his past. Oh, I have a troubled past. Jean. But they don't do as much as they could with his character. At least not up to season 3. You know, he gets his little story arcs about his past. But it's same blase, squazzy Wolverine stuff. And, you know, you do feel that he goes through some pain, obviously. But I feel like I thought more of it as a kid than I do now. Because, I don't know, man. They just don't go as much in depth as they do with the other characters. Especially with his internal dialogue. I felt. Or, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Also, Wolverine a lot of times tends to be the comic relief. Just popping his claws for anything. Like, whoa! Does Nick get happy much? To me, all the characters worked really organically. You really know what their motivations are, what their fears are, what their shortcomings are. And they just build upon that. Every episode is about a different character with different villains. This show is fucking great. I would recommend it to anybody. it gets 4.5 shots out of 5. The animation can be a little wonky. It's a little, I wouldn't even say dated, because they draw all the expressions on their faces, but it is a little wonky, and they do get the point across. And sometimes at a couple of episodes they change the animation style. It's almost like they went to a different studio for the animation, and they just look like what I can only describe as the cartoons in your math book or your language art book when you were in elementary school. Just really funny looking faces and really bright colors. It gets weird at times, but besides that, if you can look past the animation, definitely a great show, worth watching, worth to watch. At least the first 3 seasons. I'll let you guys know in part 2 what I thought of the finale. If you like this video, leave a comment down below, drop a like, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill. And yeah, bro.